You've Got Long, Long Legs by Peachsquid. My job is boring. I work in an office and I do data entry for 8 hours a day. Then I go home to my dull, taupe-colored apartment. I feel like I'm the kind of person who would have a cat, but I don't have a cat. I have some plants, so I go home, I water my plants, I eat tasteless, microwavable food. Then I go to sleep, and I have dull dreams. Sometimes, I splice things up and order Chinese food for delivery. My life is mind-numbingly boring. Then one day, one of my coworkers came into work with a smile on his face and a straw hat tilted at a jaunty angle on his head. He was humming a song while he sat back at his desk. He stared at his keyboard for a moment with a smile still plastered on his usually grumpy face. He turned to me and he said, "Well, for the life of me, I can't remember how to use this darn thing." Then he turned his head back to the computer, and his neck made an eerie popping sound, and I swear I saw this strange bulge for just a second at the base of his neck. Finally, something interesting. I'm not going to take my eyes off him. I'm going to watch this all play out, I thought. I'm hesitant to say that I'm glad I did, but I was right. My life finally got interesting. It had been unseasonably warm for weeks, and the air was out in the office. Everyone was in a terrible mood, worse than usual. The man who sat next to me, Sam, he was always miserable. He was downright intolerable since the air quit. He banged around the office, he threw files on his desk, and cursed under his breath. I ignored him. I ignored everyone. I had no office friends. I typed and I took my hour lunch break, 2 cigarette breaks, and I made no eye contact. Then, like I said, things got interesting. I got to work one morning and the office was sweltering. My boss was in his office and he had a framed picture of his 3 cats on his desk. I thought about getting a pet. My boss grunted at me in greeting. Pets certainly haven't improved his life, so why bother? I sat at my desk. People started to trail in. Sam walked in. I noticed because he was humming. He sat at his desk and we had our weird one-sided exchange. He went back to humming while he slowly poked at his keyboard with his index finger. I recognized the tune. It was that new song, always on the radio. I liked it, but it always struck me as strange that it was such a hit. It sounded old-timey, like it was being sung into one of those old-fashioned microphones in a club by a man wearing a hat and smoking a cigarette.
You've got long, long legs and big green eyes. When you look at me, baby, I get hypnotized.
I didn't get any work done that day. I watched Sam, I watched him type away with one finger, and I watched the back of his neck. I watched the smile on his face. He never stopped smiling. He never stopped humming. At the end of the day, I took a look at his computer screen before I left. I had visions of all work and no play makes Sam a dull boy. But on the screen, there were just the letters E-F-G-H over and over and over. I was disappointed. I went home and I watered my plants. I dreamed about things moving around at the base of my neck. The next day, and the ones after that, Sam came to work with a smile. The office was still a sauna. My boss shut his door and set up an oscillating fan. I watched Sam type. He started to sing quietly as he worked.
You've got long, long legs and big green eyes. Oh, baby, if this ain't love, it's my demise.
This was my routine for almost 2 weeks. The AC got fixed. I ordered Chinese twice. Sam smiled, typed, and sang. Life was a little more interesting. One day, as I watched Sam, something moved under the skin at the corner of his upturned mouth. I leaned forward. There was again a ripple. Definitely not a tremor or or a tick. Something was under his skin. He saw me looking. He turned his whole body to look at me. His smile got bigger. "Lovely weather we're having," he said. I nodded. He turned back to his computer. At the end of the day, I looked at his screen. He had typed IJKL repeatedly. I followed him out the door. He walked down the sidewalk, hands swinging at his sides. I'd followed him for almost a block when he suddenly walked sideways into an alley. I peered around the edge of the brick wall. He was standing halfway down the alley near a dumpster, and his shoes were drenched in whatever gooey trash and slime that was coating the cement. He leaned slightly to the left. Then his body shuddered like he was freezing. He straightened up. He moved his head and neck around like he was stretching the muscles, and his neck made that strange popping sound again. Something bulged at the base of his neck, and I turned and walked away. The next day, in the afternoon, Sam turned to me and said, "I sure am hungry." And he smiled so wide that the corners of his mouth cracked. That day, my boss came out of his office and yelled at Sam about not getting some reports in on time, and to wipe that fucking smile off his face, and to take off that ridiculous hat. Sam didn't do either. I decided to buy some fish, maybe some snails. I spent time that night researching aquariums. I listened to the radio. That song played twice before I went to bed.
You've got long, long legs and big green eyes. Oh baby, don't you know you keep me satisfied.
The next morning, my boss yelled at all of us about our lack of initiative. Sam hunched over his computer at an awkward angle. The bulge at the back of his neck was prominent. I hadn't taken a cigarette break since I started watching Sam. The day before yesterday, I threw out the rest of my pack, and I didn't even buy a new one. When I got into work yesterday, my boss was at Sam's desk. He was looking through Sam's files. Sam walked in. "The hell is this?" my boss yelled. Sam smiled. "This is your last warning. Get your shit together or you're fired." He stomped into his office. Sam sat down at his desk. His eyes looked like they were sinking into his face. His skin was pale and looked loose, like he'd lost a lot of weight. He was still smiling, still wearing that straw hat. He looked at me, his head cocked slightly to the side. "The weather sure is fine," he said. "Yeah," I said. "I sure am hungry," he said. "Eat something?" I said. "Maybe later. Time to work." At the end of the day, Sam's face was nearly touching the keyboard because he was so hunched over. Everyone else had left for the day, except me, my boss, and Sam. Sam had got up from his desk and walked in a halting, almost drunken stagger to the restroom. He was singing quietly as he went. I followed him. I opened the door just enough to peek in. Sam was standing in front of the mirror. He was singing. He reached up and took off his hat. The top of his head was split open, and something pink and wriggling was inside. "You've got long, long legs," he sang, as he put his hat down on the counter, "and big green eyes." He put both hands on the counter and leaned forward. "Oh, baby." His body began to stretch. His arms started to get longer. His shirt split down at the seams as his chest and back expanded. His legs started to stretch too. "That's right," he said quietly. I could hardly hear him. "That's right. I have long, long legs. And I've got big green eyes. And oh baby, I'm hungry." I shut the bathroom door quietly and I hurried out of the office. Last night, I ordered pizza. This morning, I went to work. My boss was in his office. He was smiling. "Hey," he said as I walked to my desk. "Come here." I walked into his office. He smiled a big toothy grin. I noticed a comically large watch on his wrist. The time was wrong. Music was playing quietly from his computer speakers. I knew the song well. "You like cats?" he said, still smiling. I shrugged. He bent down under his desk and came up with a pet carrier. He put it down on his desk. 3 uncomfortable-looking cats were crammed inside. He smiled at me. Something under the skin of his forehead rippled. "Don't think I'm much of a cat person," my boss said. He pushed the pet carrier closer to me. One of the cats meowed. "Take him home. Heck, take the day off. Lovely weather we're having." So, now, I have 3 cats and a couple of plants, and I'm going to take the day off and look for another job.